Well, it's happy Thursday to both Scott Baker and Sierra Holland. How are you both?
Doing well. Excited to be back.
Dynamite Mikey, 3 o'clock here on October 30th. It's field note number 1603. The headline is Leaders Who Confuse Being Kind with Being Agreeable. Good title. I'm a little worried, Sarah, because in our little dashboard that we can see, that the people watching can't see, and that also people listening would be like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Every now and then, Mikey has, like, sometimes it'll be an image or a meme or a video clip, and I can tell that there's something he has queued up that he's going to display, but it's in print so small I don't know what it is. Yes. So I feel, Sarah, like he's going to spring something on us, and I'm not ready for it.
All I have to say about that is, Mikey, is that a kind choice?
Yeah, right, yeah. Now, is this? Are you springing this off the top, or do you want us to get into the meat of this first, Mikey?
I think it will be pretty much close to the top. I think I want to have a discussion about agreeableness as a concept. Right?
I'm going to cross my arms skeptically, but go ahead.
Yeah. So you can't hardly bring up this term without recognizing it's part of the Big Five, right? Mm-hmm. So as far as However, I think that we're creating a bias around the word. And so I just wanted to point out here on this so that everyone can see that we're talking about the same thing. You know, the Big Five acronym is OCEAN. And when you get down to A, it's about agreeableness. That's what the trigger in your mind is, like, agree. And then on the spectrum, it's whether or not you have antagonism or agreeableness. And there's several ways that you could talk about it. But agreeableness as a category is also like the top thing that you're talking about. So there's this bias that's created simply in the naming convention. And I think that kind of exists, that kind of bias exists across the way that we talk about agreeableness. Everyone wants to be agreeable. No one is raising their kids to be disagreeable necessarily, right? But here we are with a field note that's basically saying, are you too agreeable? Is there a problem with the fact that it's the opposite sometimes of kindness, right? But I think we need to start with the idea of, like, well, what are we talking about with agreeableness, and do we have an existing bias that's already there?
I disagree with the premise and the question and the
figured. Yeah. So, but as you've talked about, Scott, agreeableness in the Big Five, you probably have more experience with discussing through the Big Five personality traits than either Sierra or I did. Is that a natural way to talk about that particular one of the Big Five, is to call it agreeableness?
Yes. Now there are some subcomponents to that, but I don't want to, and I will dive into them. But let's wait a beat, because I think I could then I'll just talk the whole time, and then where would we be? We wouldn't even talk about the field note. But let's go to the surface level before we come back to this definition of agreeableness, because I agree with Mikey that it's an important thing to kind of get out of the way here. But I guess there's a certain kind of leader who walks around being like, I want everybody to like me. I don't know. Sarah, do you encounter a lot of those leaders in organizations?
I think it's a common way to feel, especially when somebody is stepping into a leadership role for the first time. Right. I'm a leader. I have a new team. I'm excited to lead them. I hope they'll like me. I hope, if they used to be a peer on that team, they can still want to be perceived as that peer, that friend. And stepping into that place where now they're the ones that are making the hard decisions. They're the ones who have to carry decisions that maybe they don't even agree with very much themselves. They start to feel that tension. They start to feel that they can't always be agreeable with everything that's going on, because now the expectations of them are different. So I would say occasionally I come across somebody who really likes to be kind. I feel like you could also conflate kindness with empathy, but I don't want to get down too much of a rabbit hole there either. Kind is such a broad term, and you can take it a lot of different ways, but I like how this field note focused on, you don't want to conflate being kind with being agreeable, because there are things that it's actually kind to be disagreeable for.
Right. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? Which is, kind is not that you have a poster of kitty cats on your wall and that you just radiate, love and acceptance. Kind is, doesn't say it, I don't think exactly like this in the field note, but kind is, I have your best interest in mind, right? That I am a champion for your goals and dreams. And so therefore I'm not being kind if I let you do things that I see are entirely destructive to your future, as a parent would be thinking about a kid. And same for a leader in an organization, meaning I've got to set some standards here, and I'm actually really being kind when I hold you to those standards. That makes sense.
If you always agree, you're always going. Your team is going to wonder, what do you really stand for? If you say yes to everything, then really, what don't you stand for? If I say, I'm going to send this phishing email to everyone, and doesn't that sound so great? We're going to get new emails into our server. Somebody has to stand up and say that's not a good idea. That's not how we go about doing business or getting people's email addresses or new leads. So being a leader is standing up and saying when things aren't right, just as much as you can stand firm on the things that you think are right.
Yeah. Now, for a second, Mikey, I thought we were actually all going to go actual fishing, and that sounded like fun. And now, it's not. But so I think your question, Mikey, in terms of what the opposite of agreeableness is, are we talking about? I guess it would be cruelty, right? Would be like, am I being cruel instead of being kind? I'm not going to go into a song here, but
right. Well, there's been studies done to try to measure, what is the natural consequence of children who are rate highly on this agreeableness spectrum, right? And it's associated with fewer disobedience and concentration problems in school. Among boys, high agreeable childhood types get better grades, fewer behavioral problems than their low agreeable counterparts. In adults, it's reported as less alcoholism and depression, fewer arrests, and more career stability than low agreeable adult types, right? So, and that stands to read, that understands, like, we're in a society where you go along to get along, you'll be more successful in all kinds of ways than if you're consistently disagreeable. So the field note is kind of setting us up for this idea that the natural sense of how you were raised, right, how you were pushed, whether or not you were actually raised that way, is kind of, it's off, right? You shouldn't have been as obedient as you ought to have been, right? You shouldn't have been as agreeable as you, even though all these positive societal benefits are seen and recognized in all these agreeable kids, you shouldn't be so agreeable as a kid, right? Yeah. So
what's interesting just on that one point, my niece, I love her so much. She's so kind. She wants to share. She's big on that, but she can be so kind to a fault that there was an instance where someone was saying, "Oh, I see you have extra snacks in your backpack. Can I have one?" And she was like, "Well, my mom told me these are for me." But then the kid kept saying, "Well, but I'm just so hungry. Shouldn't I have one of your snacks?" And so sure enough, my niece said, "Well, if you're so hungry, of course," and was giving out the snacks. And, again, my sister was having a talk with her about, really, is that the best thing for you to be giving away these snacks? Like, these snacks really aren't for her. The kid's really just trying to create power over her, unfortunately. So as much as being agreeable can get you good things in the long term, you don't need to create a stink about everything. If you disagree with everything as well, then you're unpredictable, you're hard to work with, and those aren't good qualities either. But there is the downside of being too agreeable, that people can walk all over you.
But if you were going to predict which one of those two kids that you just painted out, would your niece be the better leader 40 years from now? Or is this other child who is able to kind of like use her words to get exactly what she wanted? She didn't destroy the relationship in the process, but she did get, right? And she convinced her. Like, there's all kinds of ways that says, okay, this other girl, the less agreeable one, is going to be the better leader, right? And in a lot of ways, that's what the field note's saying as well, right? I don't mean to diss your niece.
No, that's okay. I know that's not what you're saying. It's an interesting question because, well, luckily she's still a kid and has a lot of room to develop and become a different person than she is today.
Well, we'll circle back, and I think the real important question here is, what kind of snack was it?
I think it was fruit snacks.
I was to say, if it's gummy bears, that's one kind of thing. If it was like crude, like vegetables, I'm not sure. Well, look, when you
those great value smile snacks are worth getting into a fight over, though. They really are.
There's a lot of things you'd be like, huh.
Yeah.
Like I know it would be bad for for a 62-year-old man to try to talk a girl out of her snacks, but it does
would
depend
be
on the
so
snack.
easy. It'd be so easy.
I don't know. It sounds like she might defeat me. So look, here's the thing that Mikey was pointing to, which is the field note starts to go in this direction of saying that good leaders are always looking about this idea of how much comfort is needed here, how much truth is needed here. And they have an idea of likability and an idea of effectiveness, but they're going to demonstrate the kind part through how they care about the people on their team. And that is a very big question, right? I think that's the thing. Now, one of the things, just before we get out of time, because then we can talk about it, which is, I've mentioned this before when Mikey and I are talking. So on the Big Five scale, which I'm not an expert, but I've spent a lot of time in that area and produced some content on the internet that's been pretty popular. And so in that particular one, it's an interesting one in my own diagnosis, and which I'll share with you, whether you want it to or not, because I might not be very agreeable. And what's interesting is under agreeableness is politeness and compassion. So it's an unusual pattern where I'm actually pretty high in compassion and I'm very low in politeness. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm unmannerly. It just means that if I'm around authority, I'm not actually thrown by the authority. Like I will kind of speak my mind. I might actually be polite about it, but I'm not deferential because somebody else holds a different position. Just that's my normal characteristic. But I'm very high in compassion. So my agreeableness score is kind of in the middle. It's a little bit to the low side, but it does say that I'm actually looking to stick more to the truth, but I do care about the person involved. Now, I think ultimately, in a way, it's kind of what this field note is pointing toward. Not that because this personality characteristic for me probably has a lot of complications in how it plays out in the world, but it's in the field note, that's sort of the pattern. It's saying, are you willing to stand for truth for the person that you're leading and demonstrate your caring for that person in all kinds of ways other than just niceness? And that agreeableness is an evidence of your compassion for the person and their situation, but you can also still hold high standards. Now, that's the way I read it. Mikey, I know you and I have talked about this. Does that feel like it maps here or not?
I think it does, but it doesn't. It doesn't necessarily get us closer to like if there's a solution or how big the problem might be, because the problem like might actually be very different for Sierra than it would be for the two of us. Because I think that girls in American culture are probably conditioned to be more nice, more get along, more agreeable than boys are. Like it's okay for boys to fight a little bit because it's boys being boys, but girls are going to be conditioned in a completely different way. And so I wonder if female executives have a tendency to be more aware of this than male executives do.
I mean, it's definitely something I've encountered in the work that I do. Some of the senior leaders that I work with, the ones where I have the closest relationships, are ones where I have disagreed early, because they have to see that I have standards that I'm working against, that I'm holding myself to, that I'm holding others to. And that if I'm willing to disagree with them, it's only in the effort of making them better. Like, I think we can get caught up in all this binary thinking of, if I agree, I'm a good person. If I disagree, I'm a bad person. But you have to disagree to demonstrate your values. It's just the way that it works. What am I going to stand for? What am I going to tolerate? What standards am I going to let stay the way that they are? Whether I disagree or agree, I can use disagreement powerfully to underscore what matters most to the team and to the work that we're doing. So I think women probably are more aware of this tendency than others. It's certainly something that I've had to work through, of how comfortable am I with disagreement. But I think there's a lot of shades of that. There are probably tons of women who are highly disagreeable, and that's their comfortable nature as well. So it's an interesting concept to tease apart there, but I do consciously work to disagree to underscore my values anytime I can.
Which is great that you immediately go to behaviors instead of dwelling on the fact that there's gender differences, because there's you can go into birth order and think like, well, I'm the baby, I'm not the middle child, but I could have been, but I really do act as the peacemaker in my family quite often. And so now that I'm graduating out of my family and into the workplace, I'll have the tendency to be like, well, I'm really good at being the peacemaker, so I'll do that in every social situation I will in the office as well, without even realizing that's actually probably going to lower my ability to increase in the corporate ladder, right? I'll be making nice with everybody, but I won't necessarily be as quick to make things better. And I won't confront people the way that leaders need to be, right? So Scott, is your low politeness also a family trait in terms of like the way that you were not the peacemaker in the home?
Well, Mikey, I'm going to have to think about that, and I'll do some meditation and reflection.
Well, the other tab that I have open here is your mom, so let's bring her on.
Oh, you do? Okay, bring my mom in. Okay, well, look, here since we're already over time, I love the last line of this field note. And like the little sliders that you had in your little diagram at the beginning, so many things are a blend, right? Yes. And the last line is, leaders who lack kindness are hard to bear. Leaders who overly promote agreeableness are often hard to follow. That's a good thing to keep in mind.
Yeah. So the slider exists in every relationship, and you probably need to be flexible enough as a leader to recognize that that slider exists in a lot of different realms too. Like, it's great. All right. Final thoughts, Sierra?
I think you just have to decide what can I be agreeable about that doesn't have as high stakes, but what are really the topics that I do need to stand up for and maybe disagree when that topic comes onto the table? Because if you're not disagreeing, people don't really know where you stand.
And that could be conclusions or data, but as you said, Sierra, what I liked was it could be around these are my values. This is what I stand for.
Yeah. Exactly.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you both for your time today. Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye now.